My name is John Smith. I grew up in a poor family and didn't have much means to make a living, so I started working as an adult as soon as I graduated from junior high. I really wanted to go to high school with my friends and have a fun student life, but my family was too poor to just live the life. We were so broke that we sometimes had to move from one relative's house to another because we couldn't pay the rent. And since I was born as the oldest son, I had always thought that I had to support my family from a young age. So I did things like delivering newspapers and buying what I needed with my own money. There were no other students around me who did that, so I think the people in my neighborhood looked at me a bit strangely. But I didn't care about those looks. Or rather, if I had cared about them while living my life, I wouldn't have been able to live a normal life, so I had no choice but to keep working even if people looked at me strangely. My parents seemed to think that they were putting a burden on me, but since things wouldn't work out if I didn't work, they never told me to quit. Thank you for always working hard for the family, John. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be able to pay for things like lunch at school cafeteria, so you were a big help. None of my friends work like I do, but since I was born into this family, I think it's my duty, so I'm gonna work hard. Besides, I like working, so don't worry about it too much. I'm really happy to hear you say that, but if you overwork yourself and get sick, it'll defeat the purpose, so you don't have to push yourself too hard. I'm still in junior high and have plenty of energy, so I'm fine. While everyone else is doing morning practice for their club activities at school, I'm just getting up early to deliver newspapers. I'm sure the neighbors sometimes say unpleasant things to you, but you're working hard, John, so I'd be happy if you could ignore them and go about your life. But if anything really tough happens, please talk to me about it. Sure, there are people who gossip and spread weird rumors, but they are all people who don't know our situation, so I just act like I didn't hear anything. You're really working hard even though you're just in junior high, John. I'm sure your current experience will be useful when you become a full-fledged member of society, so I want you to keep pushing forward without being ashamed. I'm planning to do that even without you telling me, Mom, so don't worry. For now, once I graduate from junior high, I'm gonna work at an acquaintance's company and do my best to make things easier for you. That's how I've always lived my life, thinking only about making things easier for my mother. All my friends were in junior high, so they lived on allowances from their parents, but I lived on money I earned myself. Of course, I wanted to enjoy club activities while getting an allowance like everyone else, but I also felt like I was growing up, so I didn't hate it that much. And because I delivered newspapers, I had a lot of adult acquaintances, so I was able to find people who would hire me even though I only had a junior high education, and I was able to find a job right away. Normally, I think it would be hard to find a job with just a junior high education, but thanks to my newspaper delivery job, I didn't have any trouble finding work. Everyone else said they were going to high school, but I went against the grain and got a job. But when I actually started working, I was really happy that all the employees were kind to me. Especially my direct supervisor, Mr. Davis, was always kind to me. If you ever have any problems, just let me know. You were in junior high until recently, so I'm sure there are a lot of things you don't understand. If there's anything like that, just ask me and I'll answer. Thank you so much for saying that. There are so many things I don't understand, so I'd really appreciate your guidance. But I'm gonna work hard to become the best in this company. From the looks of it, you've got more motivation than anyone else in the company. Our company hires people regardless of their educational background, so there are all kinds of people here. So there's no need to feel inferior just because you only have a junior high education. Yes, I can change the fact that I only have a junior high education, so I want to produce results in this company and hold my head high. I don't want to be the kind of person who makes excuses just because I only have a junior high education. Normally, if someone ended up working with just a junior high education, I think they'd tend to make excuses, but you don't show those kinds of feelings at all, John. But there's no need to keep it all inside, so feel free to talk to me anytime. I'm so glad you're as my first boss. I feel like I can work hard in all kinds of ways under you. I'm gonna work even harder to gain everyone's recognition. That's how I ended up working as a junior high graduate, but various problems arose. The problems weren't just mine, but many were company-wide. You see, as Mr. Davis said, Our company has all kinds of people working there. People like me who only have a junior high education. People who aren't American citizens. People who couldn't fit in at other companies and worked as freelancers for a while, and so on. Because of that, the company as a whole lacked stability, and there were huge differences in sales. Wanting to support such a company, I decided to work harder than anyone else and gain the company's recognition. Of course, since I joined a company with only a junior high education, I couldn't do the work nearly as well as the other employees at first, and I struggled a lot. I even consulted with Mr. Davis about how I could produce better results than the others. It's been 6 months since I joined a company, but things aren't going the way I want at all. I have more motivation than anyone else, but what should I do? I guess this is all I can achieve because I only have a junior high education. It's only been 6 months since you joined a company, so there's no need to be so discouraged. You may not be satisfied with your own performance, but from my perspective, you're doing better than I expected. So you weren't expecting much from me in the first place. I think I'm not performing well compared to the company as a whole. I might be discouraging you by saying this, but to be honest, I didn't have high expectations compared to the college graduates. But John, you are making up for that gap with your guts. I knew you weren't expecting much from me. That's something you could have judged at the time of hiring, so I understand. But am I really closing the gap with the college graduates? This is something I've kept secret because I thought it would make you overconfident. But the truth is, in terms of results after 6 months, you're outperforming the other new college graduate employees. Is that how it was? I thought everyone was growing faster than me because there was no one who joined at the same time as me. That's why you don't need to feel down. In fact, you're producing better results than the college graduate employees. So you should be more confident and work hard. Thank you so much. I think I would have been even more depressed if it wasn't for you, Mr. Davis. I'll keep working hard to meet the company's expectations. To be honest, I think I would have quit the job at this point if it wasn't for Mr. Davis. That's how much I was worried about not being able to produce results, and I was having a hard time every day. But I was able to keep going without quitting because Mr. Davis was always pushing me. Of course, not only Mr. Davis, but the other employees were also kind to me. But Mr. Davis was really kind to me. Every day when I went to work, I would pass by my junior high classmates, and it was really tough to be the only one going to work in a suit while everyone else was going to high school in their plain clothes. I think it was really helpful that everyone sensed my feelings and kindly protected me. I thought I couldn't quit because by working, I was able to reduce the burden on my mother. That's why I'm really glad that I was able to keep working with the support of the people around me. And I worked hard to repay everyone while being grateful to them. As a result, I was able to surpass the performance of the other employees and get the highest sales in the company. When Mr. Davis found out about this, he praised me a lot. I saw the company's sales ranking for this month. You were finally able to get the top sales in the company, which was your goal. It's really amazing considering you've only been with the company for a few years. I'm so happy to be praised by you, Mr. Davis. I have been struggling for a long time, but I was able to come this far because of you. I heard from the CEO that you wanted to go to high school, John, but you decided to work for your family because you were the oldest son. That's really admirable. It feels kinda weird to hear you say that, Mr. Davis. I've only been with this company for a few years, but I'm glad I joined because I got to meet you. To be honest, when you joined the company, I was worried because it had been a while since we had a junior high graduate. But you proved me wrong in a good way. I look forward to working with you in the future. So you had those feelings too, Mr. Davis. Thank you for taking good care of me despite that. I'll work hard to properly repay you in the future. For me, the thing that makes me happiest is when you produce results, John. But if anything happens, I want you to come talk to me like you've been doing. You'll still be my colleague, so rely on me. Thank you so much for saying that. You're the person I trust the most in the company, Mr. Davis, so I think I'll continue to rely on you in the future. Don't just look up to me as your boss, but as a parent too. If anything happens outside of work, feel free to talk to me about it. I'll help you with anything I can. Thank you so much for even personal matters. You're always taking me out to eat, which really helps. I was doted on by Mr. Davis like a child, and he was always treating me to meals. Since I was giving most of my salary to my family, I was always living on the edge, so it really helped to have him buy me meals. I'm sure I would have become emaciated if it wasn't for Mr. Davis. I might have become malnourished, unhealthy, and sick. Considering that, I'm really glad I had such a wonderful boss like Mr. Davis. If it wasn't for him, I think it would have affected not only my work, but also my daily life. That's why I looked up to Mr. Davis and decided to work hard for him. I'm the kind of person who works for my family, so I liked working for someone. In the midst of that, I think it was really significant to have someone other than my family that I wanted to repay. But when I was working with all my might as usual, I was called out by Mr. Davis. I'm sorry for calling you out so suddenly. There was an important meeting with the executives, and an important topic came up. It's related to the company's future, so I thought I should tell you about it, John. I don't mind being called out, but what exactly was this important topic related to the company's future? Don't tell me the company's sales are slumping and we're in danger of going bankrupt or something. Don't say such negative things. Thanks in part to your efforts, John, the company's sales are on the rise. So you don't have to worry about bankruptcy. I see. That's a big relief. So what is this topic related to the company's future? Is it something I should hear about too? Actually, our company's sales are steadily growing, but we're seeing an increase in overseas clients. You're aware of that too as a salesperson, right, John? Yes. That was one of the things I had noticed. I felt like there were more companies headquartered overseas. But does that have anything to do with this? That's why there was talk about whether we should set up an overseas branch to better serve such companies. It's only been discussed among the executives, so I don't know what will happen yet. I see. So that's what was going on. We don't hear anything about the executives' discussions, so I had no idea something like that was happening. Apparently, there have been talk among the executives for a while about setting up an overseas branch. But since I was just a colleague, I hadn't heard anything about it at all. And even if an overseas branch was set up, I thought I wouldn't be transferred there since I was a junior high graduate and couldn't speak any foreign languages at all. I had the top sales performance in the company, but my career was still short, so I was overconfident thinking I wouldn't be sent overseas. But contrary to my feelings, I was summoned to a meeting of the executives. Wondering what they wanted to talk about, I entered the conference room I was called to with a bit of unease. When I entered the conference room, I broke out in a strange sweat, seeing that the company executives were really all there. What can I do for you? Have I made some kind of mistake? There's no need to be so timid. We didn't call you out just to get angry at you. So please have a seat and listen carefully to what we have to say. Oh, okay. Excuse me. So what did you want to talk about? I've never been called to a place like this before. The reason we called you here today is because there's a favor we'd like to ask of you. This isn't because we want to harass you, John. Keeping that in mind, will you hear out our request? Of course, but what kind of request requires this much preface? I trust all of you, but I'm getting really nervous. Since you joined a company, several years have passed in the blink of an eye. Despite the disadvantage of being a junior high graduate, you've grown steadily and become a valuable asset to our company, which makes us very happy. I'm really glad to hear you say that, but that kind of preface just makes me even more nervous, so I'd appreciate it if you could get to the point soon. Based on the executive's demeanor, I got the feeling that this wasn't going to be a simple matter. Everyone seemed to be giving off an air of having a hard time spitting it out, waiting for someone else to say it. Sensing that atmosphere, I just wanted them to tell me quickly and put me at ease. The executives seemed to read my emotions, but their own emotions seemed to take precedence. However, we couldn't just leave the conversation hanging, so someone had to say something, but no one seemed to want to be the one to say it. Mr. Davis, sensing that atmosphere, represented the others in conveying the matter to me. Actually, the reason we called you out today is related to what we talked about the other day. So I'll be the one to speak on behalf of everyone here. What I'm about to say may affect the course of your life, John. Are you prepared for that? I can't be prepared for that when you suddenly spring it on me like this. And what do you mean it's related to our previous conversation? We talk about a lot of things, Mr. Davis, so I don't know which time you're referring to. The conversation I'm referring to is the one about setting up an overseas branch. Actually, That idea has become quite realistic, and we've mostly decided which country to set up the branch in. Oh right, we did have that conversation. I thought it was unrelated, so I have completely forgotten about it until now. Last time it seemed hypothetical, but it's gotten that realistic. Huh? That's right. After several meetings among the executives, we came to the conclusion that setting up an overseas branch would allow us to rapidly expand our sales and grow the company. Indeed, if we can set up an overseas branch at this timing, it seems like it would make our dealings with existing clients smoother, so I think it's a great idea with many benefits. I'm glad to hear that from you, John, our top salesperson. If you say that, it makes me feel even more confident that overseas expansion will go well. Let's definitely move forward with this plan. I understand the part about setting up an overseas branch, but what was the main favor you wanted to ask of me? That's a separate issue from overseas expansion, right? No, this is what we wanted to talk to you about, John. In setting up the overseas branch, we have a favor to ask of you. Actually, we'd like you to be the representative of the overseas branch. Huh? What exactly do you mean by that? I had kind of guessed part way through the conversation, but I never thought they would actually make such a proposal. To be honest, I thought that as a top salesperson, I would be consulted on what strategy we should take in setting up the overseas branch. But I ended up being more involved with the branch than I had imagined, and was even asked to be the representative. Of course, I'm happy that the company has high expectations for me, but I grew up in a poor family and have never even been overseas. And it's only been a few years since I started working, so there's no way I can serve as a representative. I thought it would be wrong to go along with the company's consideration here and cause trouble by going overseas, so I decided to convey my honest feelings. It's tough to suddenly be told something like this, isn't it? For now, it's still in the consideration stage, so think it over, John. I'm really happy that you have high expectations for me, but I've never been overseas and can't speak any foreign languages at all, so I think it's still difficult for me to accept such a position at this point. Regarding the language, we plan to provide a reliable interpreter, so don't worry about that. However, I understand that you'd feel uneasy since it's only been a few years since you joined a company, and you have your family to think about too, so you can't decide right away. Yes, I still have to look after my younger siblings, so I think it would be tough for me to go overseas. I'm sorry for not being able to accept such a wonderful offer. No, I'm glad you conveyed your honest feelings. You're right. It would be really difficult to suddenly be put in charge of an overseas branch when you were in junior high until recently. I'm really happy that you are hoping a lot from me, but I still have a lot of areas where I'm inexperienced. So I think there would be parts where I'd cause you trouble even if I went overseas. By the way, I wanted to ask, if you had a bit more experience and a few years had passed, would you be willing to go overseas then? Well, it's not that I'm uninterested, so if I can grow more as a sales representative, I'd definitely like to take on that kind of challenge. Got it? In that case, keep working hard in the US for now, John. And once you've grown enough to become the representative of an overseas branch, I'd be happy if you'd take on that role. Thank you so much for accommodating me in every way. I want to grow into someone who can meet the company's expectations and be able to go to places like overseas branches. And so, I decided to turn down the request to become the representative of the overseas branch. It's not like I was married or anything, so I could have gone if I wanted to. And normally, I think refusing this kind of offer even once would get you kicked off the promotion track. But the executives didn't abandon me and told me to let them know any time I wanted to take on the challenge. So I decided to properly prepare myself and grow so that I could go overseas someday. With that decision made, I devoted myself to studying Thai while working hard. And a few months after I was summoned by the executives, the overseas branch was set up and began operating, just as they had said. However, for the first few years after the overseas branch was established, it didn't make any noise at all and didn't seem to be generating any profit. In the midst of that, I was called out by Mr. Davis again. I'm sorry for suddenly calling you out. There was an important matter I wanted to discuss, so I had you come all the way here. It's been a while since I was called out and told there was an important matter, but did some problem come up? I had the feeling things were going pretty smoothly lately. I'm sure you've heard about this too, John, but the branch we set up overseas a few years ago isn't growing at all and is in a critical situation. If things continue like this, we'll probably have to close down the overseas branch. I had heard that things weren't going too well, but I didn't realize sales were so bad that we might have to close it down. I never thought it was that serious. We had expected it to go better, but it's not growing as much as we thought, and there are rumors among the executives. We don't want to close it since we went to the trouble of setting it up, though. That's true. It would be a waste to close it after a few years when we went to the effort of setting it up. I understand that part, but why was I called here, by the way? Well, you've been studying Thai since the branch was established, thinking you might go there someday, right, John? I wanted to ask what you wanted to do after hearing about this situation. I see. So that's what this was about. I have been studying Thai, so I'm confident I can be useful right away. If you give me the go-ahead, Mr. Davis, I'd like to take on the challenge overseas. All right then. Give it a shot. I'll let the execs know, so go raise hell over there. You've grown even more over the past few years, John, so I have high hopes for you. And so, a few years after the overseas branch was established, I was finally being transferred there. I had been studying Thai alongside work this whole time, so I could handle casual conversation normally. Of course, I don't know if I'll be able to cut it over there, but compared to when I was first invited, I'm way more confident. When I was first invited, I couldn't speak any foreign languages at all, so I never thought I'd be able to go overseas. But after studying Thai for a few years while working hard, I feel like I can be active at the overseas branch now. Thinking that, I conveyed my feelings to Mr. Davis and decided to take on the challenge. And when I went to the overseas branch, I was able to produce better results than expected. Apparently, all the employees at the overseas branch had been recruited locally, so they hadn't been able to hire good people. Because of that, they hadn't been able to produce any results at all, so the situation completely changed just by me going there alone. More than 10 years passed since then, and I was set to return to the head office. When I returned to the head office, the employees had completely changed and it was full of people I didn't know at all. But they threw a welcome party for me because I had come back. We're having a welcome party today, for some reason, because this middle-aged guy we didn't know well came to our company, but I heard he's a junior high graduate, so he's just incompetent. That introduction is kind of, I don't know what company you came from, but what kind of life have you led to be a junior high graduate at around the same age as me? No matter how you look at it, you're incompetent, so we don't need you at our company. What company I came from? I came from overseas. What? So you couldn't get hired anywhere as a junior high graduate, so you had no choice but to go work overseas. Man, it must be tough living as an incompetent person with low education. That's not the case at all, but you don't have to force yourself to make excuses. But still, I wonder why our company went and hired a guy who can only work overseas because he's a junior high graduate. Apparently, Mr. Williams, who is a department head at the head office, doesn't know about my existence working at the overseas branch. Because of that, he seems to think I'm an employee who came from a completely different company, judging everything based on my educational background and looking down on me. I've been looked down on countless times for being a junior high graduate, so it doesn't faze me to be looked down on at this point. But even though they went to the trouble of throwing a welcome party for me, the weird atmosphere is spreading to the whole restaurant because Mr. Williams keeps making inappropriate remarks. I couldn't stand that, so I thought I should say something back, but I couldn't say anything since it was my first time meeting Mr. Williams. Then, Mr. Miller, a colleague I had worked with since before I went to the overseas branch, started voicing his opinion to Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, do you not know about Mr. Smith? To think there's someone like that working at our company. Of course I wouldn't know him. He just came to our company today. What, did he get famous on the news for committing some crime overseas or something? You better stop looking down on Mr. Smith any further. I think you'll definitely regret it once you find out who he really is. Why would I regret finding out the true identity of an incompetent junior high graduate? And even if I do find out who this guy is, nothing's gonna change. I bet he just caused some problem and got a little famous, that's all. Judging from that reaction, you really don't know. I'm sure everyone except Mr. Williams knows about Mr. Smith, so I think they're all thinking the same thing as me. Mr. Miller, I appreciate you sticking up for me, but saying that you think highly of me too much. I'm not that big a deal, so let's leave it at that. See, even his saying that. He's probably just some slightly famous incompetent person, right? Mr. Williams really doesn't know me, so he keeps looking down on me. Even after Mr. Miller said various things, he showed no sign at all of changing his stance, continuing to state his opinion without any hesitation. When I asked the other employees about Mr. Williams, apparently he usually takes a condescending attitude toward others. But since he rarely encounters junior high graduate, he seems to be looking down on me to an unprecedented degree. I didn't know anything about Mr. Williams, so I thought he was taking this attitude only toward me. But in reality, he apparently acts this way all the time, spoiling the atmosphere in the whole company. While we were having that conversation, Mr. Davis showed up at the pub where the welcome party was being held. I heard John was back, so I wrapped up work right away and came over. You really worked hard for 12 years. I'm grateful to you, John. I'm the one who should be thanking you for accommodating my various selfish requests. I don't think I could have gotten this far without you, Mr. Davis. In the end, I never went over there myself, but I often heard about how you were dominating. I was really happy because I thought of you as a kid, John. I'm glad you felt that way, Mr. Davis. Of course, the work over there was really difficult, but I was able to learn a lot too, so it was a good opportunity. The fact that you, who did all that, are back at the head office means we'll get to see an even more amazing version of you than the one I know. I'm looking forward to seeing how much you'll accomplish at the head office. When you put it that way, Mr. Davis, it makes me nervous. But I'll do my best to live up to your expectations. Thank you so much for coming to the welcome party. What is a top executive like Mr. Davis so chumma with a new junior high graduate employee? Don't tell me you're distant relatives who already knew each other or something. Mr. Williams really seemed to know nothing, looking at me and Mr. Davis talking like old friends with nothing but questions. I can blame him for that, since I had been working almost entirely overseas without coming to the US for 12 years. What the heck are you talking about, Williams? John is the one who rapidly grew our overseas branch. Even after returning to the head office, John is still overseeing our overseas operations. The overseas branch? You mean the one that accounts for over half of our sales? We have over 10 branches, and he's overseeing all of them. That's what I've been telling you. We originally only had one branch, and it wasn't doing well, but since John went overseas, it's been growing rapidly, and we've added more branches. I do remember hearing at some point that there was someone who went overseas and explosively increased sales, but I never imagined it was a junior high graduate. You always make judgments based on academic background, and you'll never be able to grow if you don't fix that. If you get carried away just because you became a department head, I'll demote you. I am terribly sorry about that. Since it's been a while since I've been back at the head office, there are a lot of things I don't know, so I'd appreciate your help with that. Of course, please let me know if there's anything I can do. I'm very sorry for my rude attitude earlier. Mr. Williams, who had been told by Mr. Davis that he would be demoted if he got carried away, suddenly wilted and started apologizing to me. I wasn't angry at all, so I forgave him right away just for apologizing. And now that I'm back at the head office, I need to make various plans to properly contribute to the company. To do that, I was going to create a new group within the company, and when I told Mr. Davis about it, he made me an executive so I could take charge. I never imagined that I, who joined the company as a junior high graduate, would be able to become an executive, so I was so happy I couldn't stop crying. I'm sure various problems will come up in the future, but I'm going to do my best to overcome them.